All right, everyone. Welcome to the Bridgeport Linux user group. My name is Keith Jackson. I'm a senior consultant with Red Hat, and today I want to talk a little bit about private registries for containers. This better work. Did I really say share? All right. All right, welcome to my very basic PowerPoint. Not a very good skill of mine, working on that. So what is a container registry? Well, basically it's a stateless server-side application that stores your container images for distribution. The registries exist because they provide control over where you store those images. They give you versioning on those images in the form of tags. So when you're working with images, you'll have your V1, V2, V3.1. You can assign a tag to each version of that image before you push it into a registry, and then your registry will keep track and maintain all of the different versions that exist until you actually go in and clean those out. And then lastly, what registries offer is they allow you to integrate your container distribution into your development workflow. So from start to finish, create your container, push it into the registry, pull it back down, make a change, push it back in as a new version. So it's working, it allows you to integrate into that workflow and into like CI/CD pipelines, for example. So, you build a container, push it into the registry, GitHub picks it up, pushes that out, spins up new containers in OpenShift or whatever container solution you're using, and your containers update to the latest version that's been pushed in by a developer. Some examples of registries. So they come in two forms. You have public and private. So the public registries are the ones that most people are familiar with. That's your Quay.io, registry.redhat.io, and Docker Hubs. Those are sort of the three that most are familiar with. There's other public registries available as well. So a lot of different companies and organizations, they also run registries that offer containers for the versions that they offer. And then you have your private registries. Most of the private registries are built off of Docker's private registry that they provide. So it's all open source. And so if you're using Google Compute, Amazon EC2, Azure, each of those offer in-house private registries that you can spin up inside of your cloud environments to be able to manage and store and provide containers to your customers or users that are also living inside of that cloud environment. And then you also have Red Hat Quay, which is one of the things I will be showing towards the end of this presentation. Red Hat Quay is Red Hat's private enterprise container registry solution. It's a pretty useful tool. It's got a lot of nice features. You can lets you control who logs in. It lets you mirror registries from other available registries. So you just point Quay to whatever registry you want it to mirror, and then it'll actually sync all the containers that by tag when you specify and keep those updated on a schedule that you set it to. So you can set it on a weekly, daily, hourly, however you want Red Hat Quay to sync that mirror, it'll go ahead and do that. And then as Red Hat or Docker or Google or whoever pushes new versions of a container into that registry, Red Hat Quay will pick it up on its regularly scheduled sync and pull that down and have that ready for you to be able to use. And then the Docker registry. Docker has provided a private registry solution for a while now. It's just a simple container, or you used to be able to install the Docker distribution RPM, which installed a HTTPD service that ran off of your system or server and allowed you to push and pull containers from that private registry that way. So those are the three that I'm going to go through, is using the Docker distribution RPM, using the using Red Hat Quay, and using the Docker registry container to provide private registries. So why would you use a private registry? Well, I mean, using the public registries are great. You get a lot of container images that you can use. They're updated regularly. But if you work with a customer that doesn't want too many people accessing that registry, well, having a private registry allows you to isolate off your registry from the rest of the internet or even the rest of the users inside of your organization. Maybe you only want certain people, accessing the registry and pulling it. So you'll be able to use role-based access if you're using like Quay. Quay also allows you to do vulnerability scanning on the container images that it has. It also lets you do audit logging. So if somebody pulls a container from the registry, Quay is keeping track of who pulled it and when. And in regards to all of them, like I said earlier, you're limiting your connections to a public registry. So maybe you want just Quay pulling images from an outside source, and then everybody pulls their images from Quay. That way you don't have 1,000 connections, 100 connections of different people all pulling probably the same image to do work on it. It also gives you privacy. So like I said, you're segregating off your registry from the rest of the internet and from the rest of anyone else you don't want to see it. It's they're locally hosted, so you can have it existing in your data center. You can have it in your cloud environment. You can have it just on your PC at home. And then and a lot of them you can mirror registries that are available publicly. This can be done with the Docker registry as well. It takes a little bit more work and it's more of a manual process. You're kind of telling the registry to go out and get it every time it needs to, or writing, doing some script work or setting up a cron job that's going to run the command to tell the registry to go out and pull it every time. So configuring a simple private registry, it's pretty straightforward. It's not a very involved process. For RHEL 7, you can use either the Docker distribution RPM, which is actually available from the RHEL 7 base repository, or you can run the container from Docker Hub as well. So if you install Docker or Podman to RHEL 7, you can just pull the registry container. It's just called registry. So you pull that from docker.io/library/registry. And then it'll have that registry container pulled into your local registry to be able to run right away. And then obviously to get the Docker distribution, you're going to need access to either a CDN or satellite if you want to be able to pull the Docker distribution RPM down to be able to install. For RHEL 8, you really can't run the Docker distribution RPM, at least from what I could find. That's not offered as part of the base repository. Could be offered from Apple. I haven't checked. But your main way you're going to run a registry, private registry, at least on RHEL 8, to get a simple one up and going, is you're going to run a container. And with that, RHEL 8 does package Podman with it. It's just a checkbox when you're deploying the server for container tools. And then once the server's done installing, you'll have the Podman installed and be able to manage and distribute container images. So like I said, with the Docker distribution method, all you're doing is installing the RPM. And once you've installed that RPM, and I did not finish that path, you're gonna browse down to the config.yaml, which is actually in Etsy docker-distribution config.yaml, I think is the full path. But I'm sorry, I forgot to finish typing that full path in there. Once you've edited that file, you're going to add your address to that address block. And let me get out of this so I can show you. Docker distribution registry config.yaml. So that's the file. And once you're in there, you're just going to edit this line, and you're going to set it to either your host name or IP, and it'll already have port 5000 plugged into there. You can change that if you want, but generally port 5000 is what the container registries usually advertise on. And then once that's done, you just simply enable the Docker distribution service. Yep, so you'll enable Docker distribution and then start the service. And once that's up and running, you'll have a registry that's being made available over HTTPD off of that server. And I already pushed a container image into this, but I'll go ahead and do another one. That way you guys can see it. And I'll go to a different server so that we're not pushing and pulling from that one, so that you guys know it's working. So let's see, what image do we want to pull? Let me log in to registry.redhat.io. If I do it right. And why did it, oh, good grief. Okay, I'm already logged in. So let's pull, see if I can grab UBI. I don't need to do latest. I'll just pull UBI. So let's make sure we've got our image pulled down. We do, there it is. So I've pulled the universal base image from Red Hat's registry. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to retag it for the new registry I'm going to push it to. Since registry 1 is the one we want to push it to, we'll call out that one by host name and port, or you could do IP and the port. And then we'll give it the same path that it has in registry.redhat.io. And we're going to tag it as latest. So let's make sure we've retagged it. We have, and then the reason I'm doing TLS verify false is because I'm not running Podman in secure mode, and I didn't edit my etc containers configuration file to specify this as an insecure registry. So I'm just doing it at the command line to tell it ignore HTTPS and just push the image in. To the local, to the private registry that I had configured on registry 1. And if we do a search on that registry, we should see our new image.
Registry.
Did I spell it?
Yeah, you got the R.
There we go. All right, there it is. So there is that image that I pulled from Red Hat, the UBI. I retagged it, and then I pushed it into my own private registry. So if there were any other users on this network that wanted to pull UBI, make changes to it, and then push it back in, all they would need to do was pull it from registry 1, make their changes, retag it, and then push it back into registry 1 and then registry 1 will have both the latest version and then the newest, and then whatever other tags exist for that image. Let me get back to tools. Now I completely disconnected.
Go up to the top, Keith, and hit reset by it. Top right.
There we go.
That should reset your terminal for you.
Yeah, I hit exit too many times.
I'm on. That web management console does not appear to be very fast.
It does not. We're not going to wait on that. All right, now we're back to tools. So the next registry method that we'll quickly cover, it's pretty much the same as the first one, only instead of running an RPM, I'm actually just going to run the registry container from docker.io. The registry container is doing the same thing that the RPM is doing. It's providing a HTTP registry that can be accessed over port 5000. In order to run that, you see down there, first I'm making a directory for opt registry data. That could be any folder you want it to be, but for me, that's the location where my container images will live. So any image that gets pushed in, that's actually where it's going to be written to when the container writes it into the directory. And so when I run that registry container, so I'm port mapping it to 5000. So the server is going to forward all the requests straight into the container at port 5000. It's going to map op registry data to var lib registry inside the container. And then I'm setting the schema 1 enabled true so that it has backwards compatibility with older versions of schemas on the container images. And then, like I said earlier, that's pulling from docker.io, library, registry, and then I'm using the latest tag to get the latest version of it. And so you also want to make sure port 5000 is open on your firewall. It's the same with the Docker distribution RPM. So in both instances, you want your server to have port 5000 or whatever port you're going, or whatever port you want to use, open on the firewall. And with the container registry, it can also be added with authentication if you wanted. I didn't do that for mine, but if you want authentication, you would just install the HTTPD tools, and then you would create a directory for your HTTP auth, your auth file that will have your username and passwords. And then once you start that container, it'll mount the auth file, and then anyone that wants to pull containers from that registry will first need to log in, just like you would if you were going to registry.redhat.io or quay.io. So we will quickly run through it again. So we already have the UBI image that we pulled from Red Hat. it's still saved in the local registry. So I'm just going to retag it for the other registry running on that container. Well, first let me do this. I will go to that server so that you guys can see that container is actually running. So there you go. Like I said, so this container, it's been running for about 2 hours, and you see there under its ports, it's port mapping port 5000 from the server into the container. All right. So let's retag the UBI image. This time we're going to send it to registry 2, which has a container running on it for the private registry. So now you'll see that we have 2 different versions of that image, one that's tagged for registry 1 and one that's tagged for registry 2. And then same as we did before, we're just going to do a podman push. And again, I'm using the TLS verify false because that registry by default is responding back on HTTPS, not HTTP. And instead of configuring my podman to run insecure, I'm just going to do it at command line. And then lastly, let's do a search on that registry and see if it's in there. Yep, there it is. So now our universal base image now lives inside of the private registry running on the container that's running our private registry on registry 2. So those are the 2, simple methods that'll get you a private registry. So the distro RPM is the more older way. That was before the container itself was created by Docker to run that registry. Now, if you look up how to do a private registry, you're more than likely gonna you're more than likely gonna find the documentation on running that registry as a container as opposed to the Docker distribution RPM. Actually, so let me move over to Quay. So with those simple ones done, maybe you want something more robust, something more enterprise level. So that's where something like Quay comes in. Quay is going to give you a lot more control, a lot more security, and greater integration into your pipelines as opposed to just running simple registries. So with Quay, I've deployed the proof of concept version. It's a non-standard, non-production version of Quay. You can actually run Quay from the upstream as well. That's at, I believe it's Project Quay. And there they have instructions which are essentially the same that Red Hat provides for running Quay in a proof of concept model that is for non-production environments. So your general requirements for Quay, you need RHEL 8. You're going to want Podman or container tools installed. If you install container tools instead of just Podman, container tools actually gives you a full suite of container management tools instead of just Podman. And again, if you select container tools while you're installing RHEL, you'll have those tools available to you. So you don't need to go to any RHEL repos from the CDN or from Red Hat or any EPEL or any other repos anywhere else to get Podman. It'll install itself right alongside with the installer if you select it. You're going to need access to registry.redhat.io if you want to install Red Hat's proof of concept. Otherwise, if you're installing Quay's upstream Quay's proof of concept, I believe you're going to quay.io for that one. So at a minimum, you want the server to have about 2 CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM, and about 30 gigabytes of disk space. And that disk space is kind of broken up into disk space to store images, disk space for the operating system and disk space for Quay itself to be installed. So let me go to Quay. So I'll do a Podman PS so that you can see all of the containers that are running that enable Quay to exist. And so the first container you need to pull is you're going to pull the PostgreSQL. And that container image you're using is actually version 10:1. When you run the PostgreSQL container, you're going to specify your Postgres database name. That'll be Quay, your Postgres admin account for just general Postgres access, the port. And as you see there, that one is port mapping on port 5432 internally. After you run the PostgreSQL container, the next one you're going to run is Redis, and that one is going to be version 5:1. And for Redis, that's basically, I think that's basically storing your your keys that the Quay container is going to be accessing. So the Quay container is actually going to be talking to both of these other containers. And then before you actually have Quay installed, you first have to run the Quay container in config mode. And what the config mode does is it actually port maps the container as on port 8080 in a config mode that allows you to go to the user browser to actually go through the a web-based configuration. So inside of there, you're specifying all the host names, where the database is, where Redis is, what the usernames and passwords for those are, what ports those are using. And then also while you're in that config menu, you can specify super users as well as enable mirroring or leave it off. By default, there are no super users and mirroring is turned off. But if you want to, you can turn those on at the config, or you can even do it at a later time. So anytime you want to reconfigure Quay, you would actually just stop the current Quay container, rerun it in config mode, make your changes, save your config file after validation, and then you copy that back into Quay into your config folder, and then untar that file into there. And what that does is it untars a config.yaml that Quay is going to use when it mounts it for the container to start up. And then it's also unpacking a auto-generated certificate bundle that's there with it. And you can also, while you're inside that config menu, you can tell Quay to run custom certs. So you can actually, it's really nice. It just gives you, button clicks, click here to upload your cert, click here to upload all your certificate files into Quay to use so that it can run, at its most secure by having custom certificates that are signed and verified by your organization. And then what you see at the very top, I have an additional container that's required if you're going to be doing registry mirroring inside of Quay, which I did set up. The repo mirror, that's an additional container, and it's just another instance of the Quay container, but instead of running in registry mode, which the main Quay container is doing, it's actually running in repo mirror mode. And so Quay is actually, so the regular Quay container is actually talking to the repo mirror as well in order to be able to grab container images from public sources and have those syncing for you on a schedule. And so we'll go into Quay, which I'm already logged in. And what you'll notice is the Quay application, it looks exactly like if you go to quay.io. And so I'm in quay.io now. They look exactly the same. And so if you're used to using quay.io already, once you get your own instance of Quay up and running, it'll be a pretty familiar experience for you as you're browsing through it. And so, like I said, I enabled myself as super user for my Quay configuration, so I can actually go into super user mode, which will make me put my password in again. And then as super user, I can create more users. I can create organizations. I can delete organizations, delete users. I can configure external connections to outside resources if I wanted. So if I want to be able to map logging in, through other methods, I can configure that as a super user. So we'll go back to repositories. So what you see here, so that first one, that was a test push I did last night. I grabbed BusyBox and I actually pushed that into Quay. And I'll switch over to the terminal, and the process is going to be the same thing as you've seen me do with Registry 1 and Registry 2. And so we'll take the universal base image and we'll push that into Quay, and then we'll go back to Quay so that you can see that it's in there. If I can get my password right. There we go. All right, so third time's a charm. So we're going to take the UBI image and we're going to make that. Going to retag it as Quay latest. Let's make sure our tags are correct. So they are. And actually, let me retag that. So one of the things they recommend in Quay when you're tagging images, so instead of just generally retagging it with the same folder path that you saw me do before, it's kind of better to tag it with the repository for where it's going. So for me, that's going to be Keith, since that's my username. So I'm going to tag it as Keith and then UBI latest. And the reason for that is when I push this into Quay, because it's using my account, that's whose repository it's going to. So we'll log into Quay. I need to make one more correction. I almost missed it. So Quay is actually on port 8080, not 5000. Now let's log in. All right. So now we are successfully logged into Quay from the command line. So now I can push that image that I just retagged into my Quay registry instead of one of my other registries. All right, so now we've got our image. So we can check from the command line to make sure it's there. Or not. It's not working. That's fine. We'll go to repositories and we'll see it there. So there it is. There's that container that I just pushed in, that I pulled it from Red Hat, I retagged it for Quay, and I pushed it into Quay, and I can browse and see that container from Quay, which this is the other benefit of using Quay, is that it gives you a nice browser to be able to see your container images instead of just doing everything command line or sending a bunch of curl commands to the API to the simpler private registries like the Docker container or Docker distro. So it's actually possible to run I think Docker provides another container that does kind of give you a web browser on top of your registry. But I haven't played with it. I haven't tried it out before, so I can't really show that. But for now, we're going to use Quay to be able to do the same thing. So we took that image, we pushed that into Quay. And if anybody wanted to pull that image, they would just go to Quay and they could pull that from my repository inside Quay and then save that and push it back if they wanted to. The other nice thing about Quay as well is, so on top of Quay segregating yourself from public registries and keeping everything more secure, you can also make each repository you have private or public. And so by doing that, you control who sees that registry, and that gives you a granular level of who can actually get to that registry. So there might be another user, Travis, and maybe I want him to have access to BusyBox and UBI, but not Quay Rel 8. So Quay Rel 8 would be private, which I believe it already is. Yeah, Quay Rel 8 is private, and I haven't specified anyone able to see that. And then I could make BusyBox a public and let everybody see it, or I can add specific users with permissions to be able to see that. So if I wanted to just make it public, I would just make it public, and now anybody that hits this Quay server can pull that image or push into that repository. So my favorite thing that I like with using Quay is the registry mirroring, which I talked a little bit about earlier. So with the registry mirroring, Quay stays up to date on whatever mirror you point it to, and it'll do that automatically. So I set this up last night. It's actually scheduled to sync here in a little under 2 hours. And what it's going to do is it's going to go out to registry.redhat.io/Quay and then go to Quay Rel 8. So basically, I have it syncing every version of that container that's tagged latest or version 3 star, which Quay lets you do a wildcard. So what it actually did was it went out and it grabbed every version of 3 that was available from Red Hat's registry. So all the way down to 3.4 up to the latest 3.5.1-4, which that one apparently came out as I was doing this last night, it seems, because I did not see that before. And so that's one of the nice things about with using Quay, especially with that mirroring, because we can see if I'll point it to, and I don't know how big this would be, but what I'll do is let's go ahead and do another repository that we want to mirror. What's a good image that's not too large, because I only have 10 gigs, so I don't want to fill this up with tons of images that are way too large. We'll go with UBI.
I was going to say, hang on, I'm going to give you one that may work, possibly. From Red Hat Training, it's just the little HTTPD server, Keith. So try looking in there. So it's Quay.io, and then that's after the slashes. That should be like 100 and some megs, 200, I think.
You said it was at Quay or?
Well, I was having you do it from Quay. You can do it from here.
Okay.
I'm just going to let you demo my personal use case.
Well, let's go to Quay.io. It'd be good to grab it from somewhere else other than where I've already done it before.
So it's Red Hat Training /HTTP. Yep, that one.
All right. Let's copy that link. Let's see what tag. So it's got latest in 2.4. Okay. That's not too many. That should work. How did I do? Did Quay relate? So create a repository, and we'll call it Red Hat Training. Where was that at? There we go. So we need the state. So I'm going to change the state of the repository to mirroring. That way I can actually configure the mirroring on it. And once I do that, provide the registry location. So I'm going all the way down to that container. And then for the tags, it's comma separated list. So we'll do latest. And then what was that other version?
2.4.
2.4. So we'll just do 2-star. That should wildcard everything after 2. So it should automatically go out and grab latest and 2.4 now. So we can set it for once a day. And you have to create a robot user to use it. I already created one, so I'm just going to reuse the same robot account that's going to be doing that. And then you specify your account.
This sounds very similar to the way that you configured Nessus or Nexus proxy.
So let me see if that works. I didn't do verify HTTPS. I don't recall if I needed to do that or not. Let me see if the other one is. No, it's not. Okay, so it shouldn't need it. All right, so let's sync now and see if it pulls down our container images for us.
Can you scroll down to where it says status? There we go.
So it's trying. It might not like my account because I normally log into Quay using my SSO. So let me make sure that I set a password on this. I thought I did.
Well, you've got underscores in your name there too, instead of dashes.
Yeah, the SSO was weird when it mapped it in. Yep.
Yeah, you've got to do underscores there, I think. That's why I was wondering, because, yeah.
Yep. So let me go back and fix this so we know that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and cancel that. Or not. Do our credentials again. We'll do them correctly this time.
See you, Chad.
That would be nice. Let's try our sync now and see if the credentials work this time. Repositories yet.
Well, the good thing is you don't have retry. It hasn't started another retry.
Still don't have anything yet, so it might still be pulling or attempting on this first try.
That's a very good point, Gary.
Yes, that would be because it.
Well, and if it even just spit out what the hell it's, I mean, what it's doing, that would even be better than just sitting there waiting.
RFE. RFE.
Let's see what this one is. So repository's still empty. Yep. Yep. Sync failed.
Yeah.
So it's not liking something that I configured on it.
Are you able to do that without credentials?
Probably can. I haven't tried. Can you pull from Quay without credentials?
I can't remember. I don't think so.
I didn't think that you could. No anonymous pulls.
Yeah, I didn't think you could, but maybe I was wrong. Signed in as my account. What?
And you signed in with the right password.
Yep.
But you should probably do this with a service account instead of your own personal account.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Keith. That external repository. Let's look at the other one. Because you've got the HTTPS in here, and I don't think you had it in the other one.
I don't have it checked on this one.
No. In the URL here, you've got HTTPS:// and you did put in the other one. So I wonder if that's forcing it to try to, if you just get rid of the HTTPS, if that will make a difference.
Yeah, good catch. I shouldn't have that on there.
Because that may be confusing to it. And the question is, do you have to cancel the other one before you hit sync now?
I thought I canceled it, but it scheduled. All right, scheduled now. It's still empty. What was that? Come on, Quay. Don't make a fool of me now. Worked last night just fine with the registry.redhat.io. It worked on my bots.
Said no one ever. And it always works in lab.
Or when no one's watching, it's also when it works.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try another one from Red Hat.
Yeah. I will say the one from Red
I
Hat.
did land Travis's image.
Well, I was going to say the one at Red Hat, the HTTP ones and some of those others are slightly larger.
So I'll do 8.2. There you go. I'll just do 8.star. If it runs out of space, it runs out of space.
How much space do you have?
I only gave it 10 gigs. That should be enough for all the version 8 containers. If they're only 72 megs. Yeah. Still empty. Still empty. All right. That's okay. URL's wrong. There we go.
And you pasted that from the instructions that they gave you. That's what I'm talking about with the documentation.
This came from registry.redhat.io.
Right, the catalog.
Yeah, it gave me a bad URL.
So, Stephen, put that on your list of stuff to fix. There, we got a sync in progress. So, it's doing something now, Keith. And while that one's syncing, you want to try something on the other one?
Yeah, it still hasn't pulled anything.
Okay, go to the thing and tell it to verify TLS. Because I am wondering, I don't know that you can get to regular Quay IO without being secure. And it should have a valid certificate.
Looks like UBI. It might still be reading in everything before it starts pulling it in. Hasn't failed yet. All right. Be part of the problem. Well, while we let these try, I mean, like I said, it does work. The Quay I set up last night, and that pulled in all of them on its own, and I'm pulling that from registry.redhat.io as well, using the same credential I configured on the other one. And see down here, sync succeeded, so that ran last night. If the other repos were pulling in their tags, this is what you would see. With the wildcard I specified for the UBI, it would pull in everything that's 8 dot, so it'll go all the way down to 8.2 or 8.1 if that was the oldest container in the catalog. So this is going to go all the way back to 8.0. So it's going to pull in 2-year-old containers as well as all the way up to the latest for version 8. Let's see if it's populated yet. It has. It has. So it's pulled the latest one so far from.
No, that's not it.
No, this is for the UBI one I set up.
Trying to pull a fast one on us.
Nope.
UBI 8 still says it's empty.
Why you gotta be cramping my style, Travis?
Sorry.
I was looking at the wrong one though. So it hasn't failed yet. It's still syncing, so it'll still be doing something in the background. Well, it did something apparently. Latest was created pointing to this one upstream, and then it deleted it. I know. That's interesting.
And you looked at the tag history. Try that for the other one now. See if anything happened in the Red Hat training one in the tag history. No
tag history, so it didn't even.
Nothing.
So it never got to it. It failed again.
That's the training one.
Yeah. So there's something I didn't do right for the Quay one. It's probably something with my credential it's not liking. So, but UBI 8 is still syncing. It just hasn't displayed anything yet inside of there, but you can see in the history it pulled in latest, but then it deleted it. Not sure why it did that. But so I mean that's pretty much it for the presentation. I do have some links. So the first one is the Red Hat gov.io. That actually has a lot of workshops and presentations you can go through around containers under their Container 101. At this point, the material is a little older now, but it's still helpful if you want to understand just general container use and how to get set up quickly with containers. They also have like labs, but I don't know if that's something you can actually access with the workshops, but you can get to the material and actually see the workshop material that they created for that. And then so that one will actually guide you on setting up the private registry using Docker distribution on Rails 7. And it also includes steps for creating a self-signed certificate that's actually going to be used along with that registry so that it's more secure. The sysadmin blog that we maintain at Red Hat. So that one is a blog site that different Red Hatters post to, as well as people outside of Red Hat can also post to that blog. And somebody did a blog on using the registry container, and it's a pretty good detailed set of steps on doing that. It starts you out with the HTTPD tools, which is where you're going to do your authentication for the registry. And you make your folders, you specify the credentials for it inside of your auth file. Then you create your registry. And then once all of that is done and you've updated your trust store locally on the system where the container is going to run, then they give you the full command that'll run that registry with everything you've just set up. So this is running almost a fully secure private registry that's got a custom certificate. It's using authentication, so not just anyone can hit that registry and pull packages from it. They would actually need to authenticate to it. And then it's also doing the backwards compatibility for the schema as well. And he does a pretty good job explaining what everything you're doing with that registry and why you're running it with those options and those switches. So it's a pretty good one if you want to follow us to set up your own private registry. I'd highly recommend it. It's what I used. I actually used this to get a registry going for one of my customers because I needed to deploy Ceph 4. And that was how I got the registry up for them. So thank you all for attending. Does anybody have any particular questions as far as it pertains to private registries or maybe Quay itself?
I have a comment or question. You are sharing the presentation on our that LUG GitHub location eventually, right?
Yeah, I'm going to share it on there. I've already created the folder that I'm going to put it into. I might make the PowerPoint a little bit fancier looking instead of so basic before I put it in there.
Okay. Well, I'll put the link in chat on where it's going to be then, just so everyone knows.
All right. And like I said, these instructions are all pretty easy to follow, especially the Red Hat Proof of Concept Guide. I did forget to show that. So the Red Hat Proof of Concept Guide is what I use to get Quay set up and running in my home lab. I did it last night, and I'd say about an hour, and I had Quay up and running once I read through the document and understood what was going on in it. I was able to get pretty much Quay up and running, and then I got the first mirror going last night. That's pulling the Quay containers from the Red Hat registry, and so it's a pretty detailed guide. So if any of you want to follow it, you shouldn't have too many issues. The only thing I will say is that when you go to run the mirror container in repo mirror mode, it doesn't have you run the Z switch when you mount, but the container will fail if it doesn't have that Z switch when you mount the config directory to it. So I noticed that, and let's see if it was in here. That was down under the mirroring registry. So it was right here. So it has you run the worker, but it doesn't actually have you do that where you're mounting the config directory at comp stack. You need to add that :Z switch at the end. Otherwise, that container will die immediately upon starting it.
And that's also a good thing for you, Stephen Smith.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. So I really appreciate everybody's time. And feel free if any of you want to demonstrate anything or have a topic you'd like to discuss. We're always open for new discussions. We're always looking for new presenters. So you can contact pretty much myself, Gary, Travis, Ben, let any one of us know, and we can get you set up and schedule a time for you to present.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Thanks, Keith. Great presentation, buddy.
Yep, you're welcome.